We have had an absolute deluge of news drop over the last 7 days. We're talking legendary franchise revivals making a comeback after 20 years, massive open world ports we didn't think were technically possible on a handheld, and some wonderfully weird indie games that are definitely going to hijack your sleep schedule. In total, we have 10 massive new game announcements and major release date updates to break down for both the classic Switch and the Switch 2. It is a packed show today, but before we dive headfirst into the madness and figure out what we're playing next, let's toss it over to a quick word from today's sponsor.
We've all played mini golf video games. You pull back an arrow, judge the power bar, and hope a spinning windmill doesn't ruin your day. But Tilt It Golf decides to take that classic formula and completely flip it on its head. Literally, instead of swinging a club, you control the entire world. There are 300 levels spread across 15 different biomes, and each biome introduces its own annoying little quirks to ruin your physics calculations. What makes it work is the speed. The levels are bite-sized and the restarts are instant. It has that classic, just one more run mentality where you fail, press a button, and you're instantly back at the start line within half a second. Best of all, it hits the digital shelves at an absolute steal of a price, just $4.99. Even better, you can snag a 20% launch discount for the first 14 days, so check out the link in the description to grab it while it's fresh. Plus, if you already own any other game from the Untold Tales catalog, they're throwing in a massive 40% owner discount to sweeten the deal.
If you're a fan of massive open-world racing games, gaming on a Nintendo console has historically been a bit of a mixed bag. Don't get me wrong, we've got absolute top-tier kart racers, but if your dream weekend involves seamlessly cruising down a massive-scale open highway in a beautifully rendered exotic supercar, your options have been pretty slim. Well, Ubisoft is throwing their hat into the ring in a very big way. They announced that the Crew Motorfest is speeding its way onto the Switch 2, and it's dropping surprisingly soon on October 8th. The game drops you straight into a sunny, scaled-down playground of Oahu, Hawaii, built entirely as a massive celebration of car culture. The big selling point here is sheer variety. You're not only stuck on 4 wheels, the game actively lets you morph from redlining a hypercar through downtown Honolulu to piloting a stunt plane over a volcano to skipping a speedboat across the Pacific Ocean waves. It's incredibly fast, high energy, and honestly just a massive blast to mess around in. But look, this wouldn't be a modern video game announcement without a couple of classic logistical quirks to talk about. First up, for the physical media collectors out there, the retail version is actually shipping as a game key card inside the box instead of an actual physical cartridge. So you're essentially buying a very nice piece of plastic shelf decoration. On top of that, it does require a persistent online connection to play. If you plan on taking your Switch 2 out into the absolute middle of nowhere for some off-grid gaming, you won't be doing much racing without a solid Wi-Fi signal. Bethesda has locked in the release date for The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion Remastered on the Switch 2, and it is launching surprisingly soon on August 11th. Now, easily the biggest, most surprising win right out of the gate here is the physical release. We are currently living in an era where you buy a physical game box only to open it up and find a decorative piece of plastic that forces you to download a massive 100 GB patch anyway. But Bethesda actually confirmed that this entire sprawling, updated version of Cyrodiil is going to be packed onto the actual physical cartridge. No massive day one microSD card storage sacrifice required. On the technical side, the game is leveraging DLSS to target a stable 900p resolution in handheld mode and a clean 1080p when docked on the Switch 2. Content-wise, they aren't pulling any punches. You get the visually overhauled base game, the massive Knights of the Nine and Shivering Isles expansions, and yes, before you even ask, the absolute legendary meme-tier horse armor pack is fully included, because you can't truly save the Empire unless your virtual horse looks exceptionally shiny. They've also spent time reworking the character generation systems, modernizing the combat animations, and tuning the leveling pipeline to iron out a lot of that vintage mid-2000s jank. It's a massive open world milestone that you can now comfortably play under your bed sheets without a system melting in your hands. Swinging through a ruined city at 80 miles an hour while trying to slice the neck of a giant, terrifyingly naked humanoid is a very specific kind of stress relief. And if you played the previous entries on the original Nintendo Switch, you already know that Omega Force managed to deliver a total blast of pure, high-speed adrenaline, even if the hardware had to sweat a little bit to keep up with the frame rate. Well, get ready to dedicate your hearts all over again, because Koei Tecmo has officially blown the doors open on Attack on Titan 3. They just dropped a massive features overview, our very first look at actual gameplay, and confirmed that the game is launching this winter for the Switch 2. Now, the biggest selling point right out of the gate is the sheer scale of the campaign. Instead of cutting off halfway through the narrative like previous titles, Attack on Titan 3 is pitching itself as the definitive culmination of the entire saga. We are talking about the complete storyline, tracked from your very first day in the Cadet Corps all the way to the chaotic, world-ending conclusion. Plus, for the first time ever in the franchise, you'll actually be going blade to blade against all of the legendary 9 Titans. The gameplay footage showcases an evolved omnidirectional mobility gear system, the physics look noticeably smoother, the anchoring looks more acrobatic, and the Titans themselves have been given a major AI overhaul with terrifying new grab behaviors that will actively pluck you right out of midair. You'll be inserting your own fully customizable scout character into the mix, playing as a brilliant engineer who takes charge of the squad while constructing defensive supply bases outside the walls and managing a roster of iconic characters. In the modern gaming industry, we have all been collectively conditioned to accept a universal truth: whenever a major publisher gives a game a concrete release date, you should probably add 6 months to a year to it in your head. Delays are standard operating procedure at this point, so when a massive studio comes out and says, hey, actually, the game is totally finished and we're dropping it early, you immediately have to stop and take notice, and that is exactly what Capcom pulled off. They announced that Onimusha Way of the Sword, the first mainline entry in this absolute legendary franchise in literally 20 years, is moving its release date up. Instead of late September, it's now hitting shelves on September 4th for the Switch 2. If you aren't familiar with classic Onimusha, think high-octane samurai swordplay mixed with deeply unsettling supernatural horror. This time around, you're playing as the iconic Miyamoto Musashi, who is brilliantly modeled after the legendary actor Toshiro Mifune, as he hacks and slashes his way through a dark fantasy version of Edo-era Kyoto that's completely choked out by demonic Genma forces. The gameplay looks incredibly sharp. It's got that satisfying, deliberate PS2-era throwback swagger, but running with modern fluid responsiveness. You're wielding the signature Oni gauntlet to absorb souls, pulling off lightning-fast Issen critical counters, and utilizing a new prolonged parry system that literally lets you physically steer off-balance enemies straight into walls or off cliffs. Now, there is one quick, weird logistical heads up if you plan on picking this up. Because Capcom shifted the timeline forward so suddenly, they actually had to temporarily cancel existing digital pre-orders on the Switch 2 system just to reset the launch dates on the digital storefront. So if you already put your money down, you'll definitely want to double check your dashboard to make sure you're still good to go for day one. So look, if your idea of a perfect weekend involves getting emotionally devastated by a sadistic robotic bear on a tropical resort, I've got some good news and some bad news. Let's get the band-aid off first. Danganronpa 2x2 has been pushed back. The developers at Gemdrops confirmed it's missing its original release window, and we're now looking at an early 2027 launch for both the Switches. But honestly, the new details they just dropped make the extra weight incredibly easy to swallow. We finally know what this whole 2x2 title actually means, and it's pretty wild. Right from the start screen, you get 2 entirely separate paths. First is the original mode, which is the classic Goodbye Despair storyline, just entirely overhauled with modern presentation and fresh character art. But the real meat of this update is the brand new Slayhem mode. This isn't only a handful of extra cutscenes or a lazy remix, it is a completely alternate universe storyline. One specific incident triggers a massive domino effect that changes everything. You get entirely different victims, brand new culprits, different murder tricks, and roughly 20% more content than the original game. It's basically premium what if fan fiction brought to life by the actual creators. On top of that, they're totally ditching the old flat side-scrolling navigation for a fully realized 3D world map. You can freely sprint through the island resort or switch to a first-person view to really soak in that deeply stressful tropical atmosphere. They also detailed a $140 special edition that includes an official reversible bucket hat because honestly, nothing says brutal high-stakes murder mystery quite like peak tourist fashion. Look for it in early 2027 on Switch and Switch 2. Look, survival horror is in a fascinating spot right now, but if you've been gaming on a Nintendo console, your options for deeply disturbing, classic-style stalker horror usually come with a few major technical compromises. Well, that is about to change in a very big, very creepy way. The team at Stormind Games just dropped a double whammy announcement that is bound to please anyone who likes getting stressed out by terrifying residents in giant mansions. Both Remothered Tormented Fathers and its sequel Broken Porcelain are getting the full top-to-bottom remastered treatment built explicitly to leverage the power of the Switch 2. Now, if you played these on the classic Switch, you know they had a brilliant atmospheric core, but they could definitely be a bit rough around the edges. Fortunately, this isn't only a lazy resolution bump. The developers are throwing out the old Unreal Engine 4 foundations and entirely rebuilding both games from scratch in Unreal Engine 5. What does that actually mean for your eyeballs? We're talking full integration of UE5's Lumen Dynamic Global Illumination. Basically, the lighting and shadows now bounce realistically off the peeling wallpaper in real time, making every single hallway look genuinely oppressive. They've also overhauled the environmental assets with higher-res textures, modernized the character models, and polished up the cinematic cutscenes so they look like a proper psychological thriller. But easily the best piece of news here is that they are actively squashing the legacy bugs. Broken Porcelain famously launched with some notorious mechanical hiccups, so getting a version that leaves the core tension perfectly intact while ironing out all that original launch jank is massive, especially when running on a powerful platform like the Switch 2. If there is one thing video games have proven over the last few years, it's that we will happily pay real-world money to simulate doing actual manual labor. Give us a power washer or a virtual lawnmower and we're completely set for hours. But what if that blue-collar day job carried a literal threat of falling to your absolute doom? Enter Sky the Scraper, a highly distinct indie roguelike action game that has officially been announced for both the Switches. You play as a young guy named Sky, who is trying his best to chase some pretty uncertain life dreams. Dreams require cold, hard cash. So, his daily grind involves dangling from cords hundreds of feet in the air, scraping layers of city grime off massive glass skyscrapers. But don't go thinking this is some ultra-cozy, relaxing experience to unwind with after your own job, because it's a roguelike, the stakes are shockingly high. You have to move quickly using wire and wall mechanics to clean the glass within a strict time limit. But if you lose suction slip or get violently blindsided by a stray pigeon, you plummet straight to the pavement. Falling finishes your workday instantly and hands you game over medical injuries. Safety first, right? Between shifts, the game pivots into a tight slice of life management. You have to survive a 2-month period where you pick your work shifts, manage your energy on days off, and upgrade your gear using a system called the Skill Synapse. Your relationships with the locals change Sky's trajectory, leading to entirely different endings based on how well you balance your sanity, your pocketbook, and your ambition. It looks fast, tense, and weirdly relatable. We don't have a rock-solid release date just yet, but definitely keep an eye out for this one on Switch and Switch 2. Think about the last time you saved the world in a video game. You probably had a massive sword, a plasma rifle, or maybe some ancient magical spells. But what if the only thing standing between civilization and total catastrophic doom was a single highly optimized fishing rod? Yeah, video games are wonderfully weird like that. Say hello to Boku Tsuri Nikki, which translates roughly to My Fishing Diary. It was just announced by publisher Imagineer and the developers over at Toybox, and it's landing on both the Switch and Switch 2. Now, what makes this immediately worth paying attention to is the pedigree. Toy Box is headed by Yasuhiro Wada, the literal creator of Story of Seasons or Harvest Moon for the old school crowd. So you already know the cozy vibes are going to be immaculate. But don't let the soft, traditional Japanese art style fool you. The developers are describing this as a cozy but hardcore freshwater simulator. In most games, you just throw a hook at a floating silhouette and call it a day. Not here. You actually have to read the environment, study an in-game encyclopedia to figure out what species live in specific currents, and meticulously pick your exact rod, hook, and bait configuration to even stand a chance, and the premise is wonderfully video gamey. You play as a young guy who has a mysterious dream, teams up with supernatural spirit companions, and sets out to save a cursed world that is literally losing its colors. How do you restore color to the environment? By executing high-intensity rod-handling showdowns against massive, corrupted monster fish, because apparently, the ultimate cure for an ancient color-draining curse is just peak angling skill. Give us a deck of cards, a randomized map, and the dream of building a broken, overpowered synergy combo, and boom, suddenly it's 3 in the morning and we've forgotten what daylight looks like. Well, a brand new announcement is about to do exactly that to your free time all over again. Developer Monkibo and publisher Akupara Games have confirmed that Montabi, their highly anticipated creature-collecting roguelike deck builder, is sliding onto both the Switches, launching surprisingly soon on August 6th. Now on paper, you might look at this and think, okay, it's just Pokemon meets Slay the Spire, and yeah, the core premise involves taming a massive roster of unique little monsters to save a city, but the actual combat under the hood is doing some distinct stuff. Instead of just throwing down cards on a flat table, your battles take place on a highly tactical 3x3 grid system. You have to actively manage your squad's positioning, evolve your monsters mid-run to unlock beefier card combinations, and choose from a pool of over 500 total cards. But easily the funniest, most stressful twist here is the trainer safety rule. In a lot of monster collectors, your human character just stands safely in the background, looking cool while your pets take all the direct blunt force trauma. Not here. In Montabi, your trainer functions exactly like the king piece in chess. If the bad guys manage to bypass your monsters and knock your trainer out, the entire run is instantly dead, which means you will literally have to take your character to a local cafe between fights to feed them a nice meal just to recover your own hit points. If you enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and check out one of the videos on screen right now. As always, I'm Cyril, big thanks to the community, and I'll see you on the next video.